Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jake, this is Nadia, this is Buddy, this is Sedona, this is Babu, and today we are talking about the Netflix adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes, I have been waiting for this for such a long time. I'm a huge fan. I grew up with the show and...
She's underselling it. She's a massive fan. She's huge on Avatar. She's been very excited for this. And I'm totally not connected to the show in any way whatsoever. I've seen probably the first couple episodes, maybe the last episode of the animated show.
Oh my god, I love the last episode.
Because I've seen you watch it, but I've just never been interested. It never really seemed my thing. So I was curious to see what the take would be from someone who's a huge fan of the show and someone who has no connection to the show. So
I'm going to ask you this time first. What did you think?
Wait, I think I should ask you because we don't know. We literally sat for 8 hours last night watching this show without saying a word to each other. You want me to break the ice?
I think you should.
Here's my take. It was fine.
Honey, you gotta rate it.
I will admit the first half was really boring. I was very bored by a lot of it. I thought the kid actors were really not great. A lot of the acting was bad. The dialogue was really wooden. But overall, the action scenes were fun. The story really got going in the second half of the season. There was more complexity. In the beginning, it was just very simple and kind of slow. But the second half of the season, especially with Zuko's character, with Uncle Iroh, with seeing the different sides and the chase and everything, it was interesting and fun. I'm excited to watch the second season. Immediately, I was just like, this isn't really my thing. It was just fine. Like it was like a cool fantasy adaptation. The worst parts of it were dialogue scenes, talking scenes, the characters. I thought the kid who played Aang was really annoying.
Wow, okay.
I thought he was like the weakest character too. Like I just didn't really buy his story. But and I thought that Katara and Sokka, I thought they were annoying too. It was fine. It was fun. Now let me know what you thought.
What would you rate the series?
I'd give it like a 6.
Oh, okay.
What?
All right.
What?
No,
I'm so curious. Did you love it? Did you hate it? I have no idea.
Okay.
I saw you take a lot of notes. That's usually
I took a lot of notes, so
it's usually a bad
reading
sign.
right now my notes. I wrote it after we watched it because I needed to write down some of my thoughts because I forget. So I'm a fan of the original series, and I was so excited about this. Now, something that you didn't like, obviously you could see, is that I cried the first episode, and I cried a little bit throughout. It was sadder, I would say. Like, so what I wrote was that it's more mature, more violent. What I love about this show is that the character essence of the original characters that the movie did not have. Like if you watch the movie, it felt like all the humor was literally stripped out of the film. I didn't feel like for this one, although I did feel like they toned it a little back and to make it more mature, which I do think it works. There were some things that when I watched from first episode to the last, I was like, okay, because you know, in the original series, everyone is like book 1, book 2, and each season Aang learns an element, right? So the first season is supposed to be him learning water element. Without getting into the spoiler, that was a little disappointing how that went about. And also I felt like they were trying to squeeze so many things in, and they didn't really go from like one book to another book, one series to another series in the actual original film. It kind of went a little bit like they took some things from other seasons and put it in this season. Some of it I could understand. The other ones I felt like it did a little bit more disservice because the character development happened in some of the scenes in the original series, so I felt like that was stripped away. I was the most disappointed with the character Boomy because he, like a lot of his presentation, he was a lot more cynical than he was in the original series. He was very humorous. He understood Aang in a way I think a lot of people didn't because he was around 100 years ago when Aang was around. Whereas in this series, it felt like he didn't really believe in Aang. It was like he was testing him for more of like a resentment reason. And the revelation of his character was very different from the original series as well. So that disappointed me. I also didn't like the ending. I felt like there was too many things going on all at once. And the original series is like 20-ish minutes stretched out. There are a lot more episodes per season or book. And this one, it was 8 episodes, and you know, some of them I just it just kind of felt like it was a little bit all over the place, but then it also felt consistent in other areas. I didn't like the the presentation of the spirit world as much.
That was my least favorite episode. I thought
Yeah,
that was
I
very
felt like
boring.
that was a little bit more poorly done, whereas I remember being really the original series, it being like very interactive. So overall, I would give the whole series 7.5. I would definitely want another season. I would want them to kind of tone it up. When I think about the adaptation of this series as live action versus like, you know, some of the other recent ones that I've seen, like The Rings of Power or The Wheel of Time, I thought that they actually did a really great job of this series as a whole. And yes, there are improvements that I, you know, definitely think should be made. But overall, I just loved the humor that they instilled. Character acting, like I thought that a lot of them actually did well. I thought a lot of them acted well. Some of them, it felt like they didn't act very well, but they were nonetheless, I think, like written more true to the character than the film. So I don't know if this is like me really liking it because I thought the movie was so bad and I was like, okay, keep your expectation like low, but I was so excited about it when I saw it. It was very powerful, you know, and I have to talk about the bending because some of the CGI was pretty bad for the water bending, but overall
I thought it was pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the production value was fantastic.
But I thought the overall bending was so well done. It just was really seamless. I love like the air bending. It was done really beautifully. I really loved it. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because I've been noticing a lot of backlash from fans of the original show, and it seems
Really?
So I thought you were going to dislike it more. So I'm surprised you gave it such a high rating.
7.5 out of 10. Well, I really wanted to give it 9, and I thought I would give it a 9 when we first started out the series. I cried because it starts off very differently than the show starts. You know, knowing what's going to happen in the series, I thought it was really powerfully done. The connection between Aang and his master and friends in the series was really powerful and well portrayed. Some of the things that they mixed up from other books to this one, it served a purpose in the original series, and I felt like that one, the purpose was kind of stripped. Didn't make as much sense to have it in season 1 versus other series. I just wish it was more closely adapted, and I think, like I said, there's still a lot of opportunities for them to have other seasons, which I do want them to have. I know that there was some rift with like the original creator with this adaptation because the creative differences. I think there was like a rift early on. I expected the changes. I expected it to be something different. It just, I still laughed. I still cried. It still touched me. And that's really what I'm focusing on. Yeah. I do want to go through some of the other changes like in the spoiler section, by the way. But this is what I want to talk about, like non-spoiler.
Yeah, it was just really nice to look at. However, I do have a feeling that if I were to watch the animated show all the way through, I would come with a lower opinion of this show. Just because I do think this kind of material seems like it'd fit better in animation, especially the tone of like lightness and the kind of kid, like the start of the show, even though they put that dark, heavy prologue, felt like a kid's show, because you're immediately like, okay, each episode is going to have a lesson. There's morals to be had. It's kind of black and white. But then once more complexity came in, I was able to go, okay, I see what they're trying to do. My take overall is I don't understand the appeal of adapting animated films or shows into live action just for the sake of it. I get they're doing it for money, but if it works so well in animation, what's the point? I mean, you're only going to lose something. It's such a stylized, expressive medium that you're never going to be able to get with actors in wigs.
I disagree. I think that there's something really nice about it being live action because you get to see the characters that you grew up in a different way. And I think that there is a way that you could do it the correct way. I think it's just like a little bit more difficult because whenever that gets done, creators of the live action, they kind of want to put their own stamp to it. And sometimes in doing that, then you can neglect like the original essence. That's kind of like the tricky thing is for them to like not make it exactly the same because they want to put their stamp to it, but also be true to the essence. Speaking of, while we're in the non-spoiler, I thought Katara's character, like dialogue and her acting kind of ones that needed the most work because...
And Aang.
Aang, I thought was fine. I thought Aang was fine.
The kid who played Sokka was fine, although none of his dialogue was funny, and it's like I think he was supposed to be comic relief. None of the humor really landed for me. I don't know if it was more because it was like more for kids, but it didn't seem like it with the tone they're going for. I guess there's an issue with tone overall in the show, but they were able to like iron it out by the end. That character Boomy, the show didn't really cohere for me until Boomy and like they were trying to rescue him, and I started to get the sense of like, okay, this is like we have an adventure, we have this kind of like goofy character, and I'm kind of vibing with the story and where it's going, and things got more complicated with the action and the adventure. But early on in the series, it just felt like a lot of exposition and explaining what's happening over and over with very little else going on. So
I thought that Zuko and Iroh's character were like so much like the original series, and I really liked that. I really loved their relationship and their dynamic, and I thought that worked really well. You know, Katara and her brother's relationship was very much like the original series, except like, you know, her brother was a little bit more sexist and in the original series, and I think that there's a journey that the sexism is still present in the animated show, but I thought like her brother taking a little journey of discovery and actually like being able to fall in love with a leader later on in the series served a purpose, and I felt like that was stripped from the show itself, and I thought that did it a disservice. The Sokka's humor was very similar to how it was in the original series. Like I said, I haven't watched it in probably, I would just say 2 years, probably a little bit over like a year and a half. I remember like some of the jokes they did have in the original series, but it was more serious at the same time. And I just think like you think of the original series and then more mature, more violent, then some of that humor is going to be stripped out. But I also was really happy that they kept a lot of it in there.
To the people who are upset about this show and are being heavily critical because it strays so much from the original, I don't blame them. It's like when you have the perfect version of the thing you like and it was done so well, anything else that's trying to do that, it's going to be worse. You know, it's not going to capture that. They're condensing things. I think under the circumstances and for what they were attempting to do, I mean, this is impressive. I think if you're just a casual viewer who hasn't seen the animated show, you're going to watch this and go, damn, that's pretty impressive. It looks like a movie. Like, it feels like a movie, and it has some slow parts, but it's pretty enjoyable. And maybe it'll get them to watch the animated show. But if you're a fan of the animated show, you're like, of course you're going to hate this. You'd hate. I think the expectations were low, but even then, like, there's going to be too many changes. And I've heard a lot of people saying there's a lot of differences with how the character dynamics are handled, and I don't blame them.
I think that like for me, granted of what I said earlier, where I think with remakes or adaptation of live action from an animated series, the hard thing is for the director or writers to put their own stamp in it. I didn't want them to do that because I did actually love the original series the way it was. I am a little nervous about the very final like episode of the series because in that original series, it was so perfect. It literally makes me cry the last episode of the original series. Like the skills and the waterbending, I mean, I want to kind of talk about that in the spoiler section very soon if you're ready to go on it.
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1.
Spoilers!
So, Aang didn't learn waterbending, like WT to the freaking F. I was really disappointed.
What the freaking fuck?
I was so disappointed. I was like, what the heck? Like, he's supposed to be learning, and it just kind of felt like it didn't feel like he really cared to learn it that much. He was teaching Katara a lot of, my master taught me this, and, you should do it like this, but I'm like, Aang, why aren't you doing it with her? Aren't you like, that you're the Avatar, you know what happens? Like, in the original series, I thought ending of book 1 was more powerful because it was the journey of like Aang trying to like learn the skills and really like being able to tap into it and accepting himself as the Avatar. Whereas in the adaptation, I felt like Aang didn't really have too much of a journey. And like in the last episode, at the very, very end, it was like, oh, maybe I'll let go of my past now. But like, it didn't feel like it was like a lot of character development where I felt like in the original series, Aang developed as a character in every single books or seasons because he was like, through the bending that he was learning, through the people that he was like learning it from. And I was like, okay, like this is the beginning of episode 8, like, but now they're in the water tribe in the north, so maybe he will learn it now, and maybe it's just like late learning and he'll learn it. No, it didn't happen at all. He like didn't accept himself and Like, I just don't understand. Like, why the hell? What was the merit of the creators like taking that aspect out of the first season? Like, it just bummed me out so much, and it also felt like it wasn't as much about Aang as it should have been. Like, there's this whole big thing going on where the spirits, the moon spirit, is angry and is channeling its anger through Aang, and then we break out into other scenes, and I felt like it was more of a distraction in the final episode rather than like it adding something to it. I just think that it should have been directed or at least cut in a way where it was more like it flowed together a little bit nicer than what we had. I have a lot of criticism about the final episode because I was really looking forward to like Aang. Like, and then Katara is like, well, I'll teach you. And I'm like, no, but you're not, like, he should already know this. Like, I don't understand, And I just kind of felt like that was just so annoying. It was very annoying. Aang didn't do any waterbending outside of the Avatar state. And then also they introduced like all the other past lives of Avatar, not all of them, but a lot of them, also together, and it was more spread out in the original series, and it just kind of, I don't know. It just was dumb. And I hated how when they go to the spirit world, he like meets his master. He thought Aang would need him for guidance, but then when Aang comes back, he's gone.
I didn't understand. I mean, I just kind of figured it was some mystical stuff. Like, I just didn't.
But it felt incomplete to me. Didn't understand the purpose of it. Also, like the person, like the monster who steals faces. Can't remember the name right now.
That was legitimately creepy.
Well, it's creepy in the original show too, but it was just like that's not the way it happens in the original show. So there was some differences in the way that it like went down, but I also didn't like. I don't know. I just didn't like that.
I will say, I thought the main trio of kids, I thought their character development was very heavy-handed, especially compared to like Zuko and Uncle Iroh's. Like, I especially don't like the trope of the characters going to some spiritual realm to see like a flashback of their darkest hurt in order for the writers to develop their character, Like, I already got a sense, like there was a lot of showing how the characters behave and then telling us why they're like that. And a lot of telling and repetitive stuff about their... Yeah. So, like, I was unbearably bored the first, like, 3 episodes. I get what the characters are. Like, it felt, like, overly simple. Like, it did feel like, oh, this is a kid's show. Like, they're just trying to tell us what the characters are and what they need to learn, etc. It got better by the end, and I do have some hope for their development. But ultimately, it felt like, all right, Sokka, he's, like, he feels inadequate, right? Because he was never really trusted to lead. Katara, she gets like a moment where she can prove herself in the final battle, but that comes like much later. I didn't feel much of a connection between Aang and, Sokka and Katara that was natural. It just kind of felt like, well, you guys are around and you're the ones helping me. Like, I didn't feel a community, like a bond between them very well. Mostly because I just think the kid who played Aang just didn't. Every time, every line reading, it was like, this is a kid saying lines and trying to memorize his lines. Like, I just found
I didn't feel like that at all from Aang. I felt like that from Katara. But
for both of them. Katara too, but I both of them, I just didn't buy it.
So I wrote that I hated the final episode where Aang doesn't learn how to waterbend at all. Besides the fact that he didn't have urgency or he didn't seem like he had the urgency that he should have to learn waterbending. I didn't like that Boomy puts like Aang to a series of tests after he reveals himself. In the actual series, he actually puts Aang to the test to reveal that he is Boomy. So that's like, oh my god, I thought like you were this weird. Like it's more.
I like that. It made it more interesting for me
that he put him in the series.
Yeah, because I was going like, oh wow, what's the difference between this kid and this old man who's his friend as a boy? And it made the whole scene way more interesting than if it was just some weird guy. I'd just be like, I don't know.
No. Okay, so I have like the different opinion than you because I hated that Boomy reveals himself who he is and then puts Aang through all these series of tests. I actually liked how Boomy in the original show puts Aang through a series of tests and then reveals himself and they depart on good terms, whereas over here they seem like Boomy was still bitter when he departed from Aang, and it just didn't seem like it was like true to the characteristic or friendship that these two had.
But that feels like something you're going, oh, I know who these characters are from this show, and they aren't like that. That seems like a criticism of adaptation, not of does this work for the show.
Well, I guess, but also it was like Boomy, even in this adaptation, is more kid-like. So I think that having him a little bit more cynical is contrary to that character, where he's more kid-like, because I thought in the original series, him believing in Aang and actually trusting Aang to do his job because of his history of friendship with him actually is very much like true to the kid-like nature that he had, where he was like very trusting, like Aang is. You know, he chooses to see the good in people rather than like see people as someone who are hopeless, right? And so I thought Boomy was like that in the original series rather than the adaptation. He was very cynical. But I guess that goes back to what I was saying. This feels more like serious, more, you know, violent.
Another criticism that I don't love that you have is the water bending. Like, why didn't Aang learn water bending? That feels something to me like in the original show he's supposed to have learned this by this point, but when I was watching the show I had no expectation that he was going to learn water
You
bending.
just haven't seen the original series. I guess it's like coming from like a true fan to like a new
like I was
yeah.
like, why I assume he's going to learn it at some point, but I had no idea like, oh, he needs to learn it before the final battle for things to work.
His past lives, you know, told him like there's something that the Fire Lord, and he's seen all the destruction that has happened, and it was just like, it just felt, even if I was coming from as a newcomer, it just felt like a disservice that he wasn't like beginning to learn waterbending. Like, he knows he's the Avatar, he knows he needs to master all 4 elements, and I just don't understand the lack of urgency behind it. But I guess that's just me.
And I get it. A lot of fans are just upset that it's different, you know, but because they know it can be better. I don't know what can be better. You know, I'm sure if I did, I would be much harder on it.
Yeah. Also, in the original series, Koyoshi doesn't take Aang's body. Actually, Roku is the one who does. I actually didn't mind that change at all. I was fine with it. I thought actually it was really well done. Also, like, okay, like you can see all you can do, so why don't you like start to master it? Like, it just felt like Aang was very fearful throughout the whole season 1, and he is fearful in the original series as well, but he wasn't making as many active choices as I wanted him to make that he was making in the original series. So I put Sokka is by far the funniest character. I really like that his humor, because he's the comedic relief in the original series in many ways, and I really like that he was a comedic relief in this adaptation of series as well. I
didn't think it was funny.
I thought he was. I was laughing. You heard me laugh.
Yeah. Do you know what the last episode of this show reminded me of? Was Princess Mononoke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There are some parallels with like the climax of that, and I was like, oh, I kind of like this fantastical, like, I like how the stakes were raised in the final episode, and so I liked the building. I like the what is it, Azula, right? I like that dynamic.
I was just about to talk about her.
Yeah.
So Azula, I thought, was played perfectly, because knowing the pressure that she faces from her father, what that does to her at the end of original series and who she becomes due to that, I could see hints of it in the adaptation, and I loved it. I loved that. I thought she played it pretty well, and I thought her character was written perfectly well. So that's what I'm saying. Like, some of these characters I thought were pretty true to the original series, but some of the other ones aren't. So, you know, there is a little bit of mixed match of that. And then some of them, I think it's like it's written to be true, but then it's not acted. It's acted a little bit more awkwardly. So Aang's ability to communicate with past avatars, that was another thing that I wanted to criticize, because like the way that the avatar state works in this is very different than the way that it works in the original series, and I don't know where they're gonna go with that. But so can he only communicate like at a certain place with these past lives? Like, where does that lead? It's gonna be interesting, but I really wish that they would show more, like, since they introduced Roku, like his backstory. And I really hope that hopefully we get more seasons, because like I said, I want them, and I really hope that this is not going to do disservice to Roku, because his character background was like one of the ones that I really loved the most in the original series. I like cried in the original series when the dragon ended up like covering him and sacrificing himself with Roku, and I really felt like the Roku and his dragon are like tied at the hip. Annoying that I didn't see the dragon.
Can't miss what I didn't know was there.
Can't miss what you didn't have.
Yeah.
So overall, that's what I have to say. Do you have anything else to say?
Nope.
Okay. But otherwise, let me know what your thoughts are, and I hope we get to speak to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.